Hello and welcome back to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I'm sitting in front of my movie corner. Have my Star Wars The Last Jedi t-shirt on, my Star Wars The Last Jedi movie right next to me, and judging by the frame around me, we are back, taking on Brendan of Left Foot Media and his video, 6 Things That Fans of The Last Jedi Are Getting Wrong. This was the second video I ever did on my channel. I basically had printed off like a transcript, and then because I didn't know at the time how to actually use videos to talk, and so I kind of went through and answered some of these different things. Now, let me grab my little phone here. I'm going to put this up at the end of the video, okay, and maybe at the beginning, because this is important. This was when Decipher owned the rights to produce the Star Wars customizable card game. Okay, in the Dagobah set, okay, they had a card called Son of Skywalker. It was Luke, of course, because the Emperor, when they're in the asteroid field and he contacts Vader, he says, the Son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi, right? Okay, so they had a card named Son of Skywalker. Well, what was the revelation to Luke in the in Return of the Jedi? It was his sister, right? Which means she's what? Daughter of Skywalker. Okay? Now again, I'm showing you this because you can search for this card. And it says, Scout, leader, made friends with Wicket, negotiated an alliance with the Ewoks. Leia found out the truth about her father from Luke in the Ewok village. Okay? So, yeah. You think? Is she a daughter of Skywalker or not? Now, another important thing that I bring up quite frequently, okay, is lore, right? Okay? Talk about this a lot, lore. Lore is something that you have to argue from, okay? And it is not something that you can just casually toss around. Now, what do I mean when I talk about lore? Well, I'm talking about the actual fluff, okay? The actual fluff of the universe at large, okay? That means events that happened in the movies. That means novels. That means comics. That means games. That means pretty much anything that is considered canonical by either Lucasfilm or, in some cases, most of the fandom, okay? Like, for instance, there were some people that didn't consider any of the novels in the Legends EU canon to be canonical because they weren't made by George Lucas. People only considered the 6 films that were made by George to be canon, and that's it, okay? And then they consider like some of the video games and some of that kind of stuff because it was made by Lucas Arts, and a lot of them surrounded kind of the original trilogy for the most part. Most people considered those to be canonical. But the thing is that when you fail on a level like Brandon did in the last part, literally, he didn't even know, okay, that in this film, okay, because I literally just watched this film about a month and a half ago, okay, and the only time that they used their breathers, okay, was when they were going down to Otogunga. And once again, okay, if we're honest people, okay, let me see here. Episode 1. images. Okay. When you look at the mission of the Trade Federation, they're not wearing breathers. They're not wearing breathers. They weren't wearing their breathers. Okay? And you can watch this film to check me. Okay? And there's even clips of it on YouTube. So, the fact that this guy right here claims that he's watched Star Wars and he knows so much about Star Wars and fails on such a fundamental, basic level as this. Okay? The fact that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon only used their breathers once, and that was on Naboo when they were going to Otoh Gunga, okay? Because they couldn't hold their breath that long, okay? When they could hold their breath for like 30 seconds to a minute while the battle droids came down to blast their remains, okay? Means that this guy doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about, okay? And that means that, I'm sorry to say, okay, that as a fan of Star Wars, okay, that his knowledge of Star Wars is very limited. And so if you're going to make a film or a video such as this, where you're going to try to attack fans of The Last Jedi, to try to say, oh, you guys don't understand anything, you guys don't understand anything, you better come prepared. Okay? And you better come knowing what the hell you're talking about. Okay? That while we may have never actually seen on screen people using the Force to protect themselves from space or protect themselves from gas, the implication was there. Okay? And the sheer fact that this guy didn't even know that means that he hasn't actually watched a Star Wars film at all. Ever. Okay? He just watched Star Wars, thought they were pretty cool, and then saw The Last Jedi, saw some things that people were talking about, and went, oh yeah, man, because I totally would have loved them to do this. And then when people are like, stop with your preconceived notions, he's like, oh, I never said that. Yeah, you did. Okay? You had preconceived notions. Stop your lying. Okay? And shut your cake hole. Now, one other thing. Okay? At the time this video was made, granted, we didn't have Rise of Skywalker. But in this film, we actually see Luke training Leia. Now, this is one of the things about the Legends EU canon that I was just like so frustrated with. Was that they showed some scenes of Luke trying to train Leia every once in a while. But you'd have thought that Mon Mothma, knowing Luke Skywalker is Luke Skywalker and Leia is a Skywalker, considering that, you know, that would have been an important tidbit of information that both Luke and Leia would have told Mon Mothma, that she probably would have said, look, I understand that it's important to get this New Republic up off the ground. But you know what, Leia? Why don't you go and train with Luke for like 2 years and come back, because then you'll be a much better diplomat, because you'll have the Force, you'll be a trained Jedi, and you'll be able to help the New Republic a lot better. And then when Luke finally gets the new Jedi Academy up and running, you know, by that time, if we've got everything settled out here in the New Republic, I'll let you go and train some Jedi yourself. You'd have thought that that would have been the right response. But instead, every single person had to have Leia running around the galaxy as an untrained Jedi Knight, okay, and like somehow resisting the Force everywhere she goes. Like, probably one of the most egregious examples was in, well, there's two. One was in the original Thrawn trilogy, okay, the 3-book cycle, Dark Force Rising, Heir to the Empire, and Last Command. In Last Command, okay, Leia has had next to no training, okay, less than Luke Skywalker had at, the point where he was imbued by the Force Spirit. At least Alan Dean Foster had the good sense to have the ghost of Obi-Wan sort of possess Luke Skywalker to fight Vader, because Luke would have been so unmatched, he would have gotten killed by Vader like that. But, there's this dark Jedi who's literally, doing these things to Luke, to Mara Jade, to Han, to, everybody in the throne room in Last Command. And Leia, with less training than everybody, is just shrugging off Force powers like it's nothing. And so's Mara Jade. I mean, granted, Mara Jade had some training under the Emperor, because she was in Emperor's hand. But at least we had an in-universe explanation as to why she could shrug it off, but not as to why Leia could. Okay? Luke hadn't trained Leia at that point. Not to the level of, it would have been, like I said, Obi's first couple of lessons to Luke, that's basically what Luke had taught Leia how to do. Okay, at that point. Because most of the time, okay, there's one scene in the first book that he's training her, and then the rest of the whole trilogy, okay, she's on one side of the galaxy, he's on the other side of the galaxy, and they never meet until Wayland. So how in the hell is she doing all of this stuff? And people call Rey a Mary Sue? Excuse me? There is no in-universe lore reason for Leia to be as powerful in the Force as she is. Not even the Force being the Deus Ex Machina that everybody pretends it is. Okay? Because you have to have at least some kind of training to be able to use the Force. Okay? The implication with Rey is that she probably had some kind of training by her parents. Okay? And then when the Emperor when the Emperor's Force Spirit started going crazy and wanted Rey, they left, and then they locked all of her memories, okay, with the Force, and then left her on Jakku. No, kind of sealed her Force abilities. And then they were popped the minute that she touched Anakin's lightsaber. Okay, in The Force Awakens. Those abilities popped, and then she started realizing that she'd had some training, okay? She'd also had a lot of combat training. That was another thing that a lot of people missed, was that she was a scavenger on a planet of scavengers, where the first one to get to the place isn't necessarily the one that's going to get the salvage. It's the one that gets back and cleans it up and gives it to the guy, okay? And if you read some of the books, you understand that at the beginning of her journey as a scavenger, she was accosted by some other scavengers working for Unkar Plutt, and they stole a bunch of her stuff, and so she decided that she was not going to be a victim anymore, and so she taught herself how to fly, how to fight, how to do everything, because she knew at some point she was going to need to get away from that place, or she was going to need to at least be ready for when her parents come back. Okay? So a lot of people miss that point because they didn't read the lore, they didn't understand. If you haven't read the novelization, you haven't read Before the Awakening, and there was a couple of other books that kind of explain some of the stuff that Rey goes through. Okay? That's the point. Okay? And literally, The Last Jedi shows how Rey uses her staff, right? She's very good at staff fighting. And when she's doing her thing with the lightsaber, right, she's kind of so she flips it around because she's used to hitting somebody with the end of her staff. I mentioned this in the Robot Head video, okay, when Robot Head was talking about how, Disney doesn't understand lightsabers, and I'm like, Robot Head doesn't understand Star Wars, because obviously, if she is used to using a staff, and she's used to attacking like this is the side that she's used to attacking with. And so what does she do? She flips the lightsaber around, and all of a sudden she starts to feel more comfortable with it. Because that's how she's used to fighting. And from that, she starts to understand how she can actually, turn the lightsaber around as she needs it, turn it around as she needs it, and then she starts going. And then, of course, when she was fighting with her staff, she understood that the rock was, in her way. So if she tried to hit the rock, right, she would hit the rock and then be like, whack! Oh, oh man, that hurt. But when she's got the lightsaber, she doesn't realize what the lightsaber can do, and she leans into the strike, and then she knocks the rock off, okay? And that was kind of the hilarious part was, it falls down and then it crushes the cart full of rocks that the poor caretakers were trying to take back up to repair the hole that she blasted in the hut. And, that was something that, like Luke watches her do that, and he realizes when she's, if you read the novelization, he realizes when he's watching her, swinging the saber, he realizes that she has good, weapon sense. Like, she understands how the weapons work, but she doesn't understand a lightsaber because he realizes that, he sees that she's starting to lean into the strike, and he's like, oh no, she's gonna cut that rock. She doesn't realize that she leaned into it a little bit too much, and her momentum's going to carry the lightsaber through the rock. And literally, that's when she cuts through the rock and it falls off. She's like, oh, whoops. So, you have to understand that this film answers a lot of the questions, okay? And that's the point. And then, one of the things that I didn't address in the last one is that he said, I think I addressed it minutely, but I'm going to address it in this one too. He said that this film felt like a poorly written third part of a 3-part trilogy because there was no cliffhanger. How? The thing is that you don't need to have a complete cliffhanger. Episode 5 didn't have a cliffhanger. You had the revelation that Anakin Skywalker was Darth Vader, okay? Luke's father, okay? Whoa. Holy crap. That was a revelation, okay? But that's not where the movie ended, okay? The movie ended with Luke and Leia, okay, with Chewie and Lando going off to Tatooine to go rescue Han, to go find out when Boba Fett was going to deliver Han, and then Luke getting his new hand, and Leia and him just standing there arm in arm, looking out at the galaxy with C-3PO and R2-D2. And that's where it ends. It's not a cliffhanger. The cliffhanger would have been that, if Anakin had revealed that he was Luke's father, and then it had gone, cut, to be continued. You'd have been, holy crap. Okay, let's talk about cliffhangers for a minute. Let's talk about the mother of all cliffhangers. Anyone? We had to wait a year. Because no one, and I tell you, no one that walked into that theater was expecting Thanos to get all of the stones. No, I didn't. Okay? Because I thought that what they were going to do was they were going to show Thanos as the big bad. They were going to kind of set him up as this big bad. They were going to kind of have him just being a juggernaut, running through the galaxy, collecting stones, and some of the Avengers were probably going to be able to fight him off from a couple of the stones, and then maybe he was going to have a few other things happen. And, when he got that final stone, and then he went, that was insanity. I can tell you that the whole theater went silent. Okay? And we were all just stunned to silence. Going, the hell? What the hell just happened? Are you kidding me? What? we were all just like, yeah, this is a cliffhanger, folks. Okay? Episode 5 wasn't a cliffhanger. Neither was Episode 2. Episode 2 was never a cliffhanger. Okay? It ends with the Clone Wars beginning. Okay? Then that's why George Lucas called it Attack of the Clones, is because, and it was so funny because I remember back before that movie came out, and this was like 2000, 2001, and people were talking online and they were like, oh, we're going to see Darth Vader in this one. I'm like, it's too soon. I'm like, they haven't dealt with the Clone Wars yet, guys. Like, the Clone Wars are going to have to happen in this film, and then we're going to have to see in Episode 3 the end of the Clone Wars and the rise of the Empire, and that's where Darth Vader's going to appear. And people were like, oh, no, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, dude, that's what happened. Go back and watch Episode 4. Literally, that's exactly what Obi-Wan says. Okay? You were once a Jedi Knight, the same as my father. My father wasn't a navigator. My father didn't fight in the Clone Wars. He was a navigator and a spice freighter. Well, that's what your uncle told you. He didn't hold with your father's ideals. Thought he shouldn't have stayed here and not gotten involved. You fought in the Clone Wars? Yes, I was once a Jedi Knight, same as your father. That implication is you fought in the Clone Wars means that, well, he had to fight in what? The Clone Wars. Okay? So the Clone Wars had to happen before we saw Darth Vader. Because he goes, how did my father die? And Obi-Wan says, Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped to hunt down and destroy all the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father. Okay? And then we hear later in Return of the Jedi that Obi-Wan is telling him things from a certain point of view. Okay? Because again, Luke was not mature enough to understand what would have happened to his father. Okay? Had he stayed with Yoda in Episode 5 and trained, not run off to go fight Vader and be all gung-ho, he would have been mature enough that Obi-Wan and Yoda would have sat him down and they would have said, okay, Luke, here's the truth. Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, one and the same. And Luke would have been, okay, so you said that my father betrayed and murdered, or you said my father was betrayed and murdered by Vader, and Obi-Wan would have said, yes, because I needed you to understand that when you take that first step down the dark path, you are no longer who you are. You have betrayed yourself. Okay? That's the first step down the dark path. You betray your own principles. So what I told you was true from a certain point of view. And that's what he tells Luke. Okay? When Luke comes back to him and he says, you told me Vader betrayed and murdered my father. And he's like, yes, what I told you was true from a certain point of view. And Luke's like, a certain point of view? And he's like, Luke, you're going to realize, sometime you're going to have to realize that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view. Anakin was a good friend. When I first knew him, I was amazed at how strongly the Force was with him. So I took it upon himself to train him as a Jedi. I thought I could train him just as well as Yoda. I was wrong. And when he turned to the dark side, the good man that was your father was destroyed. Okay? Because Obi-Wan took the cynical view because he and Anakin were like brothers. Okay? That much is clear from Episode 3. When he literally sits there and says, you were my brother, Anakin! I loved you! Like, I literally just watched Episode 3. And so, that was the point, okay? Is that Anakin was supposed to be the chosen one. Anakin was supposed to bring balance to the Force. He didn't do that. Okay? He fell to the dark side, became the very thing he swore to destroy. Okay? And in that moment, okay, even though you hear from Obi-Wan saying, or you hear from Padme to Obi-Wan saying, there is good in him, he doesn't hear it. Okay? Because to him, Vader has taken over. There is no more Anakin Skywalker. Okay? Because the last time that he faced him on the Death Star in Episode 4, when he got struck down, okay, all he could feel from Darth Vader was hate. Hatred towards him. Okay? That's the point. That's the point. The dark side clouds that person's life. Okay? But, even though, it's like Padme actually did sense good in Anakin, even though, that's why she says to him, you're a good person, don't do this. Okay? And, the other part of it is when Luke fights Vader, okay, he senses that there's a spark of good still within Anakin. And that's what Luke reaches out to in Return of the Jedi when he calls out, Father, please. Okay? He's calling out to his father saying, Father, help me. Be my father. For once in your life, be the good man that I know you are. And that's when he kind of looks at the Emperor. He looks back at Luke, looks back at the Emperor, looks back at Luke and says, screw this, grabs the Emperor and throws him down into the shaft. Okay? And Kylo has the same problem. Okay? He's torn because he feels the tug to the light because of he still loved his father, even though he killed his father. And that act split him in half. So half of him is dark side, half of him is light side. And Rey senses that, okay? And she senses that in Ben. She wants to be with Ben Solo. She doesn't want to be with Kylo Ren. Okay? And that much is clear from Episode 9. When, she heals him after they have the fight on the second Death Star, and then she heals him and she says, I did want to take your hand. Ben's hand. And that's what pulls him back to the light. It's kind of a combination. Half of it was Leia reaching out to Ben, okay, mostly because Carrie Fisher had passed away at that point, and that was the only thing that they could do with the story. But she pulls him back, okay, and then, the last little, throwing away of the dark side was Rey, saying, I wanted to take your hand. Ben's hand. And that's what truly brings him back to the light side. Okay? And then, of course, he sees the memory of his father, and that's what makes him throw the lightsaber into the ocean. And then he goes and gets a TIE fighter and goes and helps out Rey on Exegol. So, that's the point, folks. Okay? The point is that this man has no idea what lore is. And that much is clear. So let's jump back into this. I know I've been talking now for almost 30 minutes. I kind of wanted to try to finish this, and I may let it play for a few minutes before I answer, but I needed to get out what is going on, okay? And how bad this guy is at trying to discuss anything Star Wars, because he really doesn't understand the story that is going on or the fluff that makes the stories possible. Okay? I'm going to mention the second egregious point of the Legends EU canon, and that is the Star Wars Dark Empire comic series. Because again, Leia hasn't really had a whole lot of training with Luke. Still to that point, she hasn't had a whole lot of training. Not in the comics, not in the books, and not even in the video games. She's had less, she hasn't had all that much training. Okay? And by that point, we've been through the Jedi Academy trilogy. And Kevin J. Anderson, I love you, my friend. But the point is that she never really trained. So the fact that she's using the Force and doing all these Force things, there's no in-universe lore reason for her to be using that stuff. So when he says, oh, she's, like Luke Skywalker, she's the most established character in Star Wars. By what metric? The original 3 movies? Yeah, she's the daughter of fucking Skywalker, you asshat. So that means that Luke probably should have trained her at some point, right? So how can you justify everything that's going on in the Legends EU universe, but then completely ignore the fact that she's the daughter of Skywalker for The Last Jedi, and that Luke probably trained her at some point? What? Because they didn't show the Force training in The Force Awakens? She's the daughter of fucking Skywalker, you idiot! My God, are you flippin' stupid? But let's jump back into this, and let's keep on going.
That they put into their mouths to stop suffocating, right?
No, they don't.
They don't appear to be able to use the Force to protect themselves at all, and yet...
Then what did they use? Because they didn't use the breathers, son. Then what did they use? Go back and watch the fucking film, asshole. You don't even know what's going on in that scene. Which makes me think you've never seen a fucking Star Wars film in your life, man. Seriously, go back and watch the damn film. They hold their breath. I'm sure they probably use the Force because, like I said, when they stride out of the room, they're breathing normally. Go back and watch the film. In fact, let me give you a better... That's when they stride out of the room. They're not wearing breathers. Look at it. You think this guy knows Star Wars? He don't know jack. I've been watching that film now for 25 fucking years. As of this May. This is February as I'm recording this. Okay? But this film, okay, Star Wars Episode 1, will be 25 years old this May. 1999 to 2024. 25 years. I've been watching that film for 25 fucking years. I think I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And this guy wants to come along. Oh, they were using their breathers. They weren't using the Force. Then what the fuck were they doing? They weren't using their damn breathers. They go... And they held their breath for like a minute. You can time it. Okay? But when they walk out, they're breathing normally, which means they had to have used the Force to push the gas away from themselves. And then they turn on their lightsabers. They block stuff. Qui-Gon comes walking out, and Obi-Wan comes flipping in, and they're destroying the battle droids like they're nothing. They're cutting them down like they're nothing. This guy doesn't know a damn thing about Star Wars.
Here we have Leia, who is able to be out in space, and everyone knows the rules, right? Out in space, there's no oxygen for her to breathe, and yet somehow the Force is protecting her. I guess there's no real explanation given. And then she Supermans her way, or Mary Poppins, depending on which gender you prefer.
No. She just uses the Force to pull herself back to the ship. Which is the same thing as using the Force to pull a lightsaber to your hand. Okay? Or, if you want to get technical, pulling a Star Destroyer out of orbit. Oh, I'm sorry, did you forget this one too? Or maybe like Dark Empire, okay, where in a badass scene, okay, Luke uses the Force to literally deflect laser beams away from him, okay, shot by an AT-AT, reaches up, grabs the AT-AT by the head and yanks it down on Coruscant, okay, literally grabs it and pulls it down with the Force, okay. It's the same thing, dude. It's a power called Force Pull. It's been in almost every single fucking video game, with the exception of things like Battlefront and like the original Battlefront and Rebel Assault 2 Hidden Empire, because you weren't playing Jedi. But like every other game where you're playing a Jedi, okay, in almost every single game you're playing a Jedi, you can use Force Push or Force Pull. They are core Force abilities, okay? In fact, we can go so far. Okay, well, he doesn't have the power, but it might be in the rulebook. Let me see here. There it is. Force Push. Okay? Says your character can use this power to knock down up to 4 adjacent targets within 10 meters, 5 spaces. A Force Push skill check sets damage dealt by the attack as well as the difficulty for the target's reflex save. On a failed save, target is knocked back 2 meters, 1 space. Falls to the ground and suffers full damage. On a successful save, target remains standing in place and suffers half the damage listed. And it doesn't have Force Pull, but it is one of the move object. That's what it is. Yeah, this skill allows your character to move one or more objects telekinetically. Your character must be able to see the object, and it must be no more than 10 meters, 5 spaces distant. With a check result of 10 or better, your character can pick up and move an object that weighs as much as 5 kilograms, about 11 pounds, within 10 meters, 5 spaces of your position per round. If your character wants to strike an opponent with an object, your move object check is opposed by that character's reflex saving throw. A 5 kilogram object inflicts 1d6 points of damage. Cost is 1 point per round for a 5 kilogram object. Okay? So, like, literally, okay, that's what it is. But there is a Force Pull, okay? Move object is just kind of the Star Wars RPG, original RPG from 2000 equivalent. Because it basically was like, oh, I see the lightsaber, I'm going to pull it to my hand. Because it's only like, I don't know, a kilogram for a lightsaber. It's not, lightsabers don't weigh much. In fact, let me see here. I don't know if this one has... I don't know if this one has... No, this one doesn't show what it is. No, that one doesn't have the actual things. But yeah, like the hilt weighs about a kilogram. So, you know, making a check of 10, you know, you pull the lightsaber to yourself. Chink. Okay. But her using the Force to latch on to the door and pull herself to the door is not beyond what we've seen in other films. Okay? At all. Because it's the same thing, it's the same skill as Vader throwing objects at Luke in Episode 5. Okay? Or throwing his lightsaber at the catwalk. Okay? So, this guy has no idea what the fuck he's talking about.
She flies her way back into the spaceship.
Yes, she does.
That was absurd. Even people who like this film, the honest people who like this film, are saying that was absurd.
No. Because I'm an honest person, and I love this fucking film, and you're an idiot, son. Because it wasn't absurd. Because you have to ask yourself, Again, if you want to be, okay, not a disingenuous asshat, okay, if you want to be a person that is honest with themselves and is honest with the YouTube community, the internet community at large, especially the Star Wars fandom, is she a daughter of Skywalker or not? Because even on her card it says 5, Force sensitive. Ability 5. Okay? And ability 5 is one below ability 6, which is Jedi Knight. Okay? Which is what Luke was in these sets. The Death Star 2 set, Luke was a Jedi Knight. Okay? And the Emperor and Yoda were the only two people in that whole entire game that were Force level 7. Which were Jedi Masters. Okay? So she's basically, at that point, realizing her heritage, she's one level below Luke, which means she has Force abilities. Okay? She can use the Force if taught properly. Now, the biggest thing, okay, the biggest thing with this, ability 5, the biggest thing with this is that if you're honest with yourself, okay, more so than this guy ever will be, then you have to think, is Leia the daughter of Skywalker? If the answer is yes, then she was trained in the Force by Luke Skywalker, as seen in Episode 9, which means she could use the Force. Now, it's not like she just Supermaned her way back in, walked out and was like, hey guys, I just survived a laser blast, let's keep going. No, she was in a coma for the rest of the fucking film. Except for like the very end. Okay? Except for like the last 20 minutes of the film? When she walks in and stuns Poe. Sorry, dude. Again, you didn't watch the fucking film, did you? Because you're an idiot.
That should be a warning bell for you. You should have big sirens blaring in your head. Hold on a minute. Maybe I'm not actually being 100% honest when I defend this film as one of the greatest Star Wars movies ever made.
Okay, I'm not saying it's one of the greatest Star Wars films ever made. I'm not even saying it's the greatest Star Wars film ever made. It is a good Star Wars film. Okay? Because, for all its flaws, my money is on this film as the greatest Star Wars film of all time. I love Revenge of the Sith. It is the perfect bridge movie between Episode 1 and 2 and Episode 4, 5, and 6. Okay? Because it shows us how Anakin fell to the dark side. It shows us Luke and Leia being born. It shows the Death Star being made. It brings in elements from Episode 1 and 2. And then it kind of connects the whole thing together. It is the perfect bridge movie. Okay? Episode 5 and Episode 8 are high on my list as great Star Wars films, but this one has to be the best of all time. You can disagree with me all you want. I don't care. Okay? I really don't. But this guy's an idiot. Okay? Because he can't even argue lore. He doesn't know what the hell lore is. Okay? Because if he was 100% honest with himself, he would have to sit down and say, now wait a minute. In Episode 6, we learn that Leia is the daughter of Skywalker. Right? She's Luke's sister, which means that she has the Force as well. So it's logical that at some point Luke probably trained her in the Force. And anyone with any modicum of brain cells can figure that shit out without Episode 9. Because I can guarantee you that my ex-wife, okay, who I saw this film with 3 times, okay, even she could figure out that Leia probably was trained by Luke at some point, because we had watched Episode 6 because we'd watched 1 through 7, okay, And then we went and watched episode 8. And even she could go, and even she like turned to me at one point, and I think it was after the first time we watched it, and she goes, so Luke probably trained Leia at some point, right? That's why we saw her using the Force? I'm like, yeah, because she's the daughter of Skywalker. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. She wasn't a true, like, Star Wars aficionado like I am. Even casual observers can understand that, okay? Because they can suspend their disbelief long enough to go, oh, she's the daughter of Skywalker, right, Luke probably trained her in the Force. Because again, the Force is the Deus Ex Machina of the universe, you fucking moron.
If even I, as someone who likes the film, can see such a blatantly absurd moment in this particular film. Like I said, this is a series of films that includes Jar Jar Binks and Anakin talking about sand.
So? What's so wrong about Anakin talking about sand? Have you lived in a desert where dust storms are prevalent? I have, son. Dust storms are no fucking joke, man. Now, let me give you a movie to watch, because obviously you're an idiot. Okay? Guess what he based this on? That's right, the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. In fact, the film footage that's sort of like a documentary-style film footage is actually from a documentary about the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. You absolute freaking moron! Dust is prevalent. It gets everywhere. I can understand Anakin Skywalker, okay, spending the first 9 years of his life, okay, at that point in episode 2, half his damn life on a planet that is literally made of sand. Okay? I can understand him hating sand, because the sandstorms on Tatooine are much like the sandstorms that you see in this film. Okay? And the dust gets everywhere. Okay? I can understand him hating sand. I can understand him going, you know, because here's Padme, okay, saying, we used to come here for school retreat, you know, we'd swim out to that island and lay out on the beach and let the sun dry us. And Anakin's like, I hate sand. So I spent 9 years of my damn life on a planet that was literally choked with sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. I can understand Anakin Skywalker hating sand. Now, Jar Jar Binks is a whole other can of worms. People can go back and forth in the comment section if they want to talk about Jar Jar Binks. I don't have a problem with Jar Jar Binks, okay? Jar Jar Binks is your typical comedic idiot, okay? He was the bumbling buffoon that does everything wrong, but it ends up turning out right, okay? He's basically the Elmer Fudd of the Star Wars universe, okay? Or the Porky Pig of the Star Wars universe, where he does random things and they end up working. Okay? I don't care. Jar Jar Binks is Jar Jar Binks. Love him or hate him, he's part of the Star Wars lexicon. Get used to it. Okay? You have to take some of the good with some of the bad. And no, I don't subscribe to the whole Darth Jar Jar crap. Okay? I just think that it's like he was easy to manipulate, okay? Because literally they were like, you know, well, maybe if we tell, you know, like maybe if Senator Amidala were here, we'd be able to do this stuff. And then he was like, you know, I'm filling in for Senator Amidala. Maybe I should make that radical proposal. Because he literally said that he would do her job. If you go back and watch the scene. Okay? She literally says, you know, you're going to be my representative in the Senate, Jar Jar. Okay? You're going to do my job while I'm gone. Duh.
And yet The Last Jedi still managed to top that in the absurdity. Basically, in a nutshell, the critics of The Last Jedi are not a group of people who went along and watched this film and then said, oh, I don't like what they've made there.
Yes, you are. Because obviously you don't know Star Wars at all. That much is clear. Okay? And yes, you walked in with preconceived notions of what they should have done in this film. Okay? And then you turned around and went, well, I hate this film because they didn't do it the way that I would have done it. And then when people called you out on that bullshit, you're like, well, I never said that. We never said anything of the sort. Yeah, you did. So shut your cake hole, son.
I wish they'd made my version of the film, and so I'm going to get up.
You literally just said that in this video. You literally said that in this video. Right here. 6 things that the fans of The Last Jedi are getting wrong in fallacy number 3. You literally sat there and went, well, I would have done this, and I would have done that, and I would have done this, and because they didn't do this, and that means the movie sucks. You literally had a preconceived notion of what should have happened in this film right here. Okay? And because of that, people called you out on it, and now you're backpedaling. Oh, no, I never said that. I never said that. Yeah, you did. So shut your cake hole, Brandon.
Upset about it. That's not what's going on here. Instead, this is a group of people, and I include myself in this, obviously, who went to the film and then came out of it thinking, hold on a minute, what happened there? Why is this going on? What the heck is happening here? This doesn't make sense at various points in the film, right?
That's because you don't know the lore. You don't know the in-universe reasons as to why certain things are happening. You don't know the in-universe reasons, or you don't even know the out-of-universe reasons, as in, you don't know the reasons that Rian Johnson wrote the script the way that he did. Okay? Because he wrote the script from the standpoint of Episode 5. Luke Skywalker, Frank Spencering shit. Because that's what he always did. And when presented with the choice, train Rey, don't train Rey, throw the lightsaber, okay? He said, I saw it as him throwing the lightsaber every single time. Judging by the fact that he's the one that basically turned Ben Solo into Kylo Ren. He's going to throw the lightsaber because he doesn't want any part of it anymore. That's how he saw it. Sorry if that didn't meet your expectations, Brandon.
Or on reflecting back on the film and realizing, hold on a minute, that's a big plot hole right there. Or that's a big pointless diversion that just doesn't make any sense.
What, are you talking about Canto Bight? Huh? It made sense. Because they had a plan, dude. What was the plan? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Grab my handy-dandy visual dictionary here. Let's see. Why were they going to Canto Bight? He's on the next page. There he is. Why were they going to Canto Bight? Didn't they need this guy? Guy wearing the red palm bloom and gambling at the casino, okay, on Canto Bight. Because they needed to get onto that ship. Snoke's ship, the Supremacy. Right? Because of hyperspace tracking. Because if they could shut it down, then the fleet could get away. Duh! Anyone who's seen the film knows that. Except for this guy, because he didn't watch the movie. Which is literally why, okay, people like me told him, you didn't watch the film, dude. It's not because we're calling it high art. It's not because we're saying, oh, you need to watch it multiple times. No, we're saying you need to watch the fucking film, dude. Because if you're not watching the film, guess what? You are literally throwing things, okay? You are literally not understanding the plot because you're not paying attention to the film, to the scenes, to what's going on in each scene, okay? Rose zaps Finn. Finn wakes up. She's hauling him off to the brig. And he's like, you know, we're doomed. And she's like, no, we're not. We can go to light speed. And he goes, no, we can't. They could, you know, hit us from, you know, because they'll just show up 5 seconds later and we'll have blown a ton of fuel, which we're dangerously low on. And then she goes, hyperspace tracking. And then they both come to the realization that they're tracking them from the Supremacy. So they go to Poe, and they say, okay, and Poe's like, okay, give this to me one more time. And he's like, look, they're tracking us from the Supremacy. If we get on board the Supremacy, there's this little tiny part, okay, that's their tracking thing, and if we can shut that down for a window of about 3 minutes, I think it was, there was like a window of like 3 to 6 minutes where the fleet can jump into hyperspace and they won't be able to track us. Okay? So, Rose and I will sneak on board the ship and we'll do it. And then they said, who can we get that will know what to do? And then they go, Maz Kanata. So they contact Maz and she goes, of course I could do it, but I'm a little busy right now. And so then she says, you need to go find the master code breaker. He's playing he wears this red plum bloom, right? He's wearing a big red flower on his white jacket, and he's gambling at a high stakes casino on he's gambling at a high stakes table on Canto Bight. Okay? So they come up with a plan and they go for it. That's why they went to Canto Bight. It wasn't a pointless side quest, you absolute moron. Okay? And, needless to say, they actually did get a code breaker. Granted, DJ wasn't probably the best person in the world that they could trust because he sold them out as soon as they got caught to save his own skin. Okay? Which, anyone could have seen that coming just by what he did. Okay? By stealing another person's ship and, like, doing all this other stuff. I mean, it was pretty obvious he was going to sell them out to save his own skin if they got caught. Okay? That much was clear. You knew that was coming. I mean, anyone with any brains knew that was coming. Okay? I saw it coming the first time I walked in the theater and I saw him standing there in jail. There's a reason why he's sitting in jail, you absolute freaking moron. Okay? So no, Canto Bight wasn't a pointless side quest, okay? They used the Fathiers as a diversion to escape from the police. You absolute idiot. It wasn't like, oh, we're trying to do this. No. I mean, does Rose say, yeah, it felt good to put to put a fist through this lousy town? Yes. But that's not the whole reason for that particular quest, was for her to just go off and trash Canto Bight. They went there to get a master code breaker. They got a master code breaker who sold them out. Again, watch the fucking film.
That's right. This is bad writing.
No. What's bad writing is anything this guy says. Because honestly, he hasn't come up with one single lore-related reason as to why this film sucks. Okay? Not one. And I've been at this, 8 parts, 9 parts now? Honestly, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
This is not about people who disagree with the writing directions that they took. This is about people who look and see that they didn't execute a film particularly well on the storytelling side of things.
By whose metric? By a guy who claims he's watched Star Wars but doesn't know the single first thing about any of the films. Okay? Completely disregards Leia as being the daughter of Skywalker. Completely misses the fact that the Jedi weren't using rebreathers in the Trade Federation ship, that they only used them once, and that was on the planet of Naboo, not on the Trade Federation ship, orbiting the planet. Okay? Like, by whose metric, man? Because by my metric, this is probably the worst piece of anything I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of crap. Okay? This guy has no fucking clue what he's talking about. None whatsoever. Okay? And I don't say that lightly. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Okay? So let's try to finish this up. We've got about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to try to let this run for a little bit.
I mean, there's no doubting the visuals in this. They're amazing. And everything else that you expect to see from a Star Wars film is there, except for the storytelling. And ironically enough, the original trilogy, even though, it was a big blockbuster special effects bonanza, it wasn't perfect in that regard. But where its real strength was...
Actually, that I'll agree with you. There were a lot of writing problems. And that much is clear in the prequels when Lucas was writing the prequels himself. Okay? In fact, he actually got some help on episode 3. Okay? Because he wanted the film to be strong. So he pulled in some extra help to help him polish up the script a little bit. Okay? Because after the criticisms of episode 1 and episode 2, he said, hey, I'm going to need a little bit of help. So they went out, they hired a guy who came in and helped write the film, and then they produced, like I said, probably the best Star Wars film to date. It was episode 3, in my opinion. Okay, now, again, that's my opinion. You can disagree with me all you want. I don't fucking care. The point being, okay, that the original trilogy, for all its great stuff that it does, okay, has major, major problems, okay? But, that being said, it's still, you can overlook those problems. The problem comes in when people look at the original trilogy with these rose-colored glasses of, oh man, that was back when Lucas could do no wrong, before the prequels, before Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, before everything, before all these problems. No, man, the original trilogy sucks. Okay? Compared to some of the later movies, some of the original things in the original trilogy suck. Okay? Some of the story beats, some of the things that they do, some of the wacky, zany adventures they go on, it's just idiotic. Okay? Now, I understand that they happen that way because that's the way that the story took them. Okay? Because that's the way that they wrote the story. Okay? There are some things that I probably would have done a little differently had I been doing it. But that's neither here nor there, because I'm not the person in charge of that. Am I? No. So guess what? I have to deal with it. And you know what? I do. I just say, you know what? It is what it is. Okay? Just like this film, okay? Star Wars The Last Jedi is one of my favorite Star Wars films. I love it to death. I love that ending throne room fight between Kylo, Rey, and the Praetorians there. I mean, that whole sequence is bad fucking ass. Okay? And I mean, it is really cool looking. Okay? The way that they fight, the way that they, the way that they do things, the Cortosis weapons that they use, it's badass. Okay? And yes, I know it's Cortosis because it can withstand the lightsabers. Now, I don't think the whole weapon is made. I think the weapon heads were made of Cortosis. And some of them had actual electricity on them. But, like, there's a couple of scenes where it's like they have, like, one guy has, like an energy whip looking thing, like it's a sword, but then it turns into, like, an energy whip. And he actually whips it around the actual lightsaber, and it doesn't break or anything. So that's how you know it's Cortosis. Okay? Because that was... And here again, where did they get that from? Legends EU. Okay? Cortosis was a metal that could withstand lightsabers. Okay? Now, a lot of people are like, well, why didn't they just make Cortosis lightsaber hilts? Well, probably because Cortosis weapons are very heavy. Okay? And the Jedi wanted speed over, the ability to keep their weapon from getting cut in half. So, most people don't care. Okay, most Jedi are after the speed aspect of it. not necessarily the, not getting my, weapon cut in half. Okay, so there's that.
In the storytelling, those imperfections you looked past because the characters and the story and everything else was meaningful, and it spoke to you in a way that actually went beyond just superficial stuff. And
actually, I can say this, that I really, really, really don't like Episode 4 Luke. He is a whiny little punk. Okay? Can't stand him. I really can't. Okay? In fact, there's only one character that I probably think is whinier. And it's funny because it's actually the same voice actor who played Obi-Wan in this. I hate this character. I hate this guy. Okay? In fact, I really don't like this game. It's one of my worst freaking Final Fantasies ever. Okay? And, again, you're welcome to disagree with me. But I don't like this game. Mainly because he is whinier than Episode 4 Luke. I think probably the only reason that people mostly tolerate him is because he does kind of grow up over the course. I mean, that's the one thing, is that he does get better over time. Okay? And that's the one thing that we understand as fans, is that when there's character growth, when you see the people grow and change over the course of 3 films, it's good. When you don't see characters grow and change at all, they're the same when they start as when they end, okay? It's pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. Or you force your protagonist to become a certain thing. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Force Unleashed. Because, I mean, honestly, this guy didn't really have a good, well-thought-out story arc. Okay? He sort of, like, gets discovered as a boy by Darth Vader, gets trained up by Vader, goes on a few missions and kills a few Jedi, gets betrayed by Vader and the Emperor, and then basically Vader tells him to go and, like, round up all of the leaders of the rebellion, and then he fights, the Emperor and Vader. And that's it. That's the game. It was arbitrary. You knew you were going to end up on the light side. It was so stupid. Like, going into it, you just knew you weren't going to be playing on the dark side. It was dumb. So, yeah. But, like, in this one, okay, this character, Tidus, is the same at the beginning of the game as he is at the end of the game. He does not grow. And neither do any of the other characters in this game. They don't grow. There is zero growth in that game. That's what I mean by flat 2D characters. And it was so funny because I mentioned that in one of my Final Fantasy groups on Facebook, and this guy goes, "Oh, yeah, you say that in a group, in a game with polygonal models." And I'm like, I'm not talking about the models, you moron. And he's like, "Well, I know." I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you're just pretending to know so that you don't sound stupid. So there's zero character growth.
Instead, what we've got here is a movie where effectively the original Star Wars, what you have is they use the special effects and the sort of the mind-blowing visuals. They're the vehicle. And sitting in the driver's seat of that vehicle is a good story. Good bunch of characters, a good story, and they are driving the vehicle. So what's more important is the person behind the wheel, right? That's what really matters here. In The Last Jedi, what we've got is they've effectively just taken the driver out and they've got an unmanned vehicle. They've now got lots of amazing visuals and everything else that we've come to know and love, but no one's behind the wheel.
How? You'll notice that he's saying this stuff, but again, as I've said repeatedly throughout this whole entire thing, he says these things, but he never brings up examples of, like, For instance, like Canto Bight. I don't understand why, they were here doing this, da 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 da. I explain that. There is a driving force behind every single scene in the film. The problem is, this guy had so much crap going on in his head that he had so many expectations that when he sat down to watch this film, all he saw were his expectations being shattered instead of watching a great Star Wars film. And so to him, he's like, well, I don't understand this and this and this. And then we say, dude, you need to go back and watch the film. Oh, no, I don't. That's not high art. What are you talking about? No one ever said you needed to watch it because it's high art. You need to watch it because you missed half the damn story, dude. That's why. You missed the story because you had so many preconceived notions in your head of what the story was supposed to be that when you got into the film, you watched the Star Wars film and you went, oh, this Star Wars film sucks because they didn't do what I wanted. This is what I wanted. And then complained about it on the internet, and then when people go, you're talking crazy, you go, oh no, I never said anything like that. Yeah, you did.
Driving it all, and they're hoping that, hey look, nostalgia point, hey look, amazing visual, and they didn't really focus as much attention on creating a solid and coherent. It doesn't have to be complex, just simple would be fine.
It is. That's the point. You wanted complex, son. You wanted all these different things. You wanted Luke to run off and go get Leia, and you wanted Luke to go do this, and you wanted Ben Solo to go do this, and you wanted all this other crap, dude. You wanted it more complex. And it was simple, and you missed it. How? Because you didn't watch the fucking film. Watch the fucking film. It's all there for you to understand if you just turn off your expectations knob and sit down and watch the film. But no, you don't do that. You sit down with this expectation in your head and then turn around and go, oh, I expected it to be better. Okay, what did you expect the story to be? Well, I expected this to happen and that to happen, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you're not the writer of the film. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. They could pull every idea out of his head and put it on screen, and he would still hate it. I guarantee you that. I mean, this guy is so dumb. It hurts. That's why I'm trying to finish this, because I'm done with this.
No one's asking for complex, it's just a simple story. And so as a result, people like me have looked at the film and have gone, yeah, this is not good storytelling. The problem here is not that we disagree with the direction you've taken the film, the problem is the way you've executed it.
Yeah, it is, dude. Yeah, you had a problem with the direction that they took the film. Because obviously you did. Go back to your fallacy point number 3. You literally sat there and went, well, I think that, that Luke should have gone and gotten Leia and done this, and then Kylo kind of went over and said, here's the line in the sand. Oh, you're either with us or against us. Oh, and then he comes over and he starts killing them all. Dude, you had a preconceived notion in your head of what you wanted when you walked into this film. Stop trying to say that you didn't. Because you did. And it wasn't what you wanted, and so ergo, you hate it. Stop lying.
It's not particularly good. Interestingly enough, I think of the 3 films that have so far been released by Disney, since they have taken possession of Star Wars, the 3 films they've released, I think the best by far is Rogue One. Interestingly enough, Rogue One too is in a very tightly prescripted sort of environment. I mean, we know the events that it's leading up to. They don't have a lot of room to move the story in massive different directions, but still, despite that fact, they managed to give us a new piece of creative storytelling. Now, it wasn't perfect. There's problems in that movie for sure. But
like what? What problems were in that movie? Again, he says things, but he doesn't back it up at all. Okay? There's problems in every film, and I'm not going to go into continuity errors or anything like that. If you're talking about some story structure problems or you're talking about some different things, what were they? Okay? Because again, they fit the story, like you said, within the proscription of these people are trying to get the Death Star plans and they're trying to get them into the hands of the rebels. Okay? That's the story of Rogue One. That's it. That's all they were trying to do. Okay? And so when they looked at the beginning of Episode 4 at the crawl, okay, Star Wars title crawl, and they said, Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the Galactic Empire. They went, what was that victory? Well, they made it Scarif Base. Okay? They lost a lot of fighters. Okay? They never said they won the war. They just said they won their first major victory. They didn't say there weren't losses. Just said they won their major victory. Okay? So, the point being that, again, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Because he is throwing things around and saying, oh, there's so many problems. Okay, what were some of the problems? You'll notice that he says that a lot, but he doesn't bring up any specifics. And I think he doesn't bring up any specifics because if he did, like I'm doing now, I would be owning him on every single point. Okay? Now, I'm not sitting here saying that you can't have the opinion that you think a movie's terrible. Go ahead, have that opinion. But if you're going to go to a Star Wars fan site, or if you're going to put it out there, okay, like on a YouTube video, you're going to go onto a Star Wars fan site and say, I hate this film, I don't like these films, you're stupid if you like these films, expect people like me to be like, what was wrong with them? And you'd better have your lore ready. You better be able to explain, if you don't like The Last Jedi, why don't you like The Last Jedi? What about it is bad? From a lore perspective. And when I'm talking about lore, I'm talking about the fluff. The actual stuff from Star Wars. Okay? And when I'm talking about lore, I'm not just talking about, oh, let's look at The Last Jedi, or let's just look at this. I don't have my timeline with me, do I? I don't. Yeah, I don't have my chronology with me. But you have the Legends EU canon with you. If you like stuff in the Legends EU, well, I liked what they did with Luke in this one, and, you know, to turn him into this and to do this and do that. That's fine. That's your opinion. Great. Go for it. But don't tell people like me that we can't like the films. Okay? You can say you hate it. You can say you never want to watch it again. That's fine. That's your opinion. But if you're going to sit there and try to say that there is something structurally or there's something in the Star Wars lore that you don't understand that makes no sense as to why characters would be acting this way, something like that, be prepared to defend it with the lore. If you don't, expect people like me to own you. And I'm not saying that lightly. I am saying that because we as big Star Wars fans, we know the lore. Okay? Now, I don't know everything that Disney has done because I don't have Disney Plus anymore, and so I haven't been able to watch The Mandalorian, Resistance, you know, all of that stuff. I haven't been able to see all of those different TV shows. Okay? I haven't watched all of Clone Wars. I haven't watched all of Rebels. Okay? Most of my knowledge is limited to the new trilogy, Solo, Rogue One. Okay? And related books surrounding those films. Okay? Like the novelization, Before the Awakening, Lost Stars, like the Aftermath, the one that kind of talks about, you know, sort of like between Battle of Endor and Battle of Jakku. Phasma, the book. and the comics. Some of the comics that led up to The Last Jedi, and some of the comics that they, not Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. Some of the comics that led up to The Rise of Skywalker, and then Resistance Reborn, and then the novelizations of The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. Okay, because a lot of those fill in some of the gaps that were left by the movie because of runtime, pacing, editing, that kind of stuff. Sometimes they choose to take things and kind of turn them around, kind of turn them away, and that's fine. Okay, they do that. Now, I've said this before. Okay, my retired Marine friend didn't like Episode 7 because he thought that we needed to see the Hosnian system. Okay, we needed to see that. We needed to see the Republic to understand why. And I said, well, it was kind of like Alderaan. Okay? We heard about the Hosnian system from Hux. He destroys the Hosnian system. Granted, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of it. And in the novelization of Episode 7, there is a scene where Coruscant, who is... let me pull out my Force Awakens visual dictionary here. So, when you see the Hosnian system in Episode 7, okay, you see this gal and you see this guy, okay? And if you don't have the visual dictionary, if you haven't read, then you don't know who this is, you don't know who this is, okay? This is the leader of the Republic, the New Republic, at this time, okay? At the time of Episode 7. Coruscant is a representative of Leia Organa to the Senate to try to tell them, to try to convince them to jump in and fight against the First Order, okay? And that's the point that my friend made. We don't know these people. They just appear in one scene and then they're blown up in like 2 seconds, literally. Like, we see them walk out and then they look up, there's a red light, and then boom, the planet explodes. Okay, we don't know who these people are. Okay, and I agree with him. There would have been I think it probably would have been a nice change of pace to see Hux's speech interspersed with Corsella's plea to the New Republic. And then they shoot the weapon out, and then like somebody comes running in and goes, "Something's coming!" And then you see them run out, and then the weapon hits, and boom, the planet explodes. Again, not saying that The Force Awakens is the worst movie ever made, but that scene would have made the sacrifice of the Republic the destruction of the New Republic at the hands of the First Order that much more meaningful. Okay? Not saying that The Force Awakens sucks, just saying that particular scene of having Coruscant and General Hux talking at the same time, okay, would have made more sense. Because then you wouldn't have had to read the novelization or pick up the visual dictionary to understand who these two characters are. Because you would have seen them. Okay? That's what my retired Marine friend said about Force Awakens. And I agree with him. Okay? I do. I agree with him that there were some certain parts about The Force Awakens that they could have done, and it would have made the movie just that much better. Okay? That was a mistake on J.J. Abrams' part. Okay? Because he didn't put that information in the movie. It was in the books. It was in the novelization. Okay? And I think there was probably some deleted scenes to that effect. But unless you've seen those, or unless you have the visual dictionary, you won't understand that. Okay? But again, that's something that is a minor nitpick. Okay? That doesn't diminish the whole value of the movie. It's just, it would have made the movie just that much better. Okay? It would have made that scene make a little bit more sense. Make sense? Okay?
It's creative, and it feels like Star Wars, but it feels like Star Wars was something new about it. And interestingly enough, it's a film that was very tightly boxed in by the parameters that it had to live up to. It's going directly into A New Hope. They can't really muck around too much with the story, and yet they still managed to produce something creative and new, right? Despite its imperfections. The last...
Like what? Again, you mention these things, but you don't mention what they are. If you're going to mention something, mention what the fuck they are, man.
Jedi, they had all the scope in the world to be as creative and new as they wanted to be, and they executed it badly. And to me, that's where the real problem lies here. So next time someone tries to throw any of these fallacies at you, just say...
Okay, this is basically the end of his thing. So, the next time that, if you don't like The Last Jedi, the next time somebody says to you, hey, I get it, but you need to sit down and watch the film, man. Okay? Because the story's explained, there's things going on there that you've obviously missed because you're kind of hyped up with your own expectations. Maybe turn off your expectations, sit down, and watch the film. Don't be like this guy. Okay? This guy's a moron. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. Okay? So, I hope this has been a lot more informative for you, okay? I hope this helps you understand that if you're going to argue, and it doesn't matter what fandom you're talking about, okay? It could be Dune, it could be Star Wars, hell, it can even be Star Trek, okay? If you're going to argue with people, you have to come at it from a lore perspective. And the lore is the fluff, okay? And if you're not going to argue from that perspective, expect people to come at you from that perspective. And in the eyes of the fandom, you're going to look less, they're going to look more, because they owned you in that regard. Okay? That's what I mean when I say, I've owned him on every single point. I'm not saying that I'm some master who has memorized every single thing about Star Wars that's ever been made. I'm saying that I know the lore. I know the stories. I know the movies. I know the books. I know everything that there is to know about these particular things. And so when this guy says, well, we've never seen anything like that because this, and then I prove him wrong, that should show you that, no, son, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay? And so that should make this guy seem really minuscule in your eyes, because if he can't even get a scene in episode 1 right, it has to make you question, have you watched a Star Wars film? Or how long has it been since you watched said Star Wars film? Because honestly, it seems to me like this guy hasn't watched a Star Wars film in 20 years. Outside of maybe watching episode 8. Okay? Because honestly, a person who is being completely honest with themselves, if they have a problem with something, again, their opinion being what it is, he can say, Last Jedi sucks. Okay, fine. That's your opinion. Okay? You don't have to watch it if you don't want to. But to sit around and make a almost 30-minute YouTube video where you're trying to say that people are bringing up fallacious claims and you can't even get basics about the lore right, you can't even get scenes about the movie right, you completely disregard the fact that Leia is a daughter of Skywalker, and you don't even know what the hell is going on inside Star Wars, inside the bigger universe of Star Wars itself, it just means that, son, you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to Star Wars. And you're okay to have that opinion. And I've told people that. Okay? In fact, many times on a lot of the Star Wars, pages that I'm a part of on Facebook, I'll have people come in and be like, oh, I hate the new trilogy. I'm like, okay then, go back to Legends EU. Let the rest of us enjoy it. Because inevitably, those people come in and they start saying, "Oh, you can't like that film. It sucks." Why? Why can't I like it? Why do I have to share your opinion? Maybe I think your opinion is stupid and I don't agree with it. Maybe I think my opinion is more valid because I actually have the lore backing me up. Because whenever I've asked people about the lore, okay, on any of those fan sites, I ask people about the lore. What lore-wise did you not like about it? Well, Luke did this. Episode 5. Literally. He's looking at it through the lens of episode 5. Well, but in episode 6. Yeah, because he had nowhere else to go. Okay? Because literally he tried to get out of it. I can't kill my own father. Then the Emperor has already won. You were our last hope. Yeah. Basically telling him, you're the only one that's trained to do this, dumbass. Get your ass on a plane and get over there. And he does. Okay? And that's the only reason. That's why Rian Johnson made the choice he made. Lore. Okay? You have to look at it. You can't look at it through the lens of the Legends EU timeline because that doesn't exist in the new Disney EU timeline. That does not exist. Get that out of your head. They took some ideas from said things and they merged some characters together and they did some things to make the story work for what they needed it to be. But the Legends EU timeline is gone. You can't use that as justification as for why something like The Last Jedi doesn't work. And so, like when he says, "Oh, Luke is one of the most established characters," by what metric? Because when Disney took over in 2015, they basically took the whole entire Legends EU and went, we're starting over fresh. So literally, the only stories you have that feature Luke Skywalker, okay, in any capacity to be able to do anything, is 4, 5, and 6. That's it. So by what metric are you putting that in? And if you're going by the Legends EU, his character was so all over the map. And I've talked about this many different times. Okay? His character was all over the map. And it was pathetic. Okay? What they did to him. Like Dark Empire. Which takes place 6 years after Return of the Jedi. Literally. 6 years. And you're telling me that a 20-year-old clone of the Emperor can best a 30-year-old Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. And that somehow Luke is now old. Really? Who wrote that? Who was allowed to... I mean, who thought, dude, no, don't mention he's old. No. Just, the Emperor's better. Just, oh, come on, Skywalker. When last I saw you against Vader, you had better skills than this. Come on, he's taunting him. That's what it should have been. What the hell were they thinking? Sorry, that doesn't work. Okay? So again, you're welcome to have any opinion you want. I don't care. You're welcome to say this is the worst film ever. You're welcome to say it's the best movie ever. I don't care. Okay? If you're gonna say it to a bunch of fans who love the movie, if you're gonna sit there and say, I hate the movie and you can't like it either, expect people to punch you back. If you're gonna punch them, expect them to punch back. Okay? Because if they're like me and they like the film, okay, and they think it's a good Star Wars film, expect them to punch back. And expect them to punch back using lore. Or expect them to just say, well, that's your stupid opinion. Doesn't mean that I have to believe in it. Okay? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this video series so far. Sorry this took so long. I know it went a little over an hour and a half, but I wanted to get this done. So as we say, we will see you on the next one.